After all the previous fun that had to be dealt with, it was about noon when we finally got back to the apartments. I figured my neighbors would take me straight to the elevator and bring me to my place, but nope. Instead, they had a big party set up for me. Just about everybody from the building was there to show their gratitude for protecting their friend. I will admit that I was a bit choked up at all the effort they put in. In fact, I made sure that I stood up from the wheelchair to show the proper respect to everyone. If you're wondering about the wheelchair, it's because the bullet came close to my spine, the temporary cavity that had caused some serious damage on the way through. The doc said that if I wasn't in really good shape, I probably would have died from shock, as if being shocked wasn't a shock enough. The party lasted until a few of the group got a little too friendly. Friendly? Hell, I saw them stripping down to head to the elevator together. That was much more skin than I wanted to see at that point. Besides, my medications made it so I couldn't drink, unfortunately. During which time, I insisted that it was the creature in the elevator that was the hero, not me. Every time, they just smiled and would either look away or look at each other with an odd expression. I tried not to think about it and just enjoyed the party. The cake was exceptional, and the homemade snacks were a definite pleasure. I actually found myself having to slow down from getting too full too fast. Eventually, though, the party has to end. I didn't know if it was the medications, the excitement of the whole day, the time of night it was, or recovery from the injury, but I was nearly unconscious when my buddy wheeled me to the elevator. I suddenly was excited as a kid on Christmas morning, and I couldn't even keep my eyes open. I even thought about hitting my wounds just to wake up some more, but didn't need the extra month of recovery. It was bad enough that a gym rat like me was going to be out for at least 6 months. When the doors closed, I could hear my buddy and a few others chuckle behind my back. It must have sounded all sorts of funny trying to put words together at that point. Probably sounded like I was still under the gas or something. As my eyes began to shut, I could see something working its way up the side of the wheelchair. It was mainly red, but also had a plethora of other mixed colors in it. I could make out the change in shape as it oozed its way up to the side of the chair. I tried to reach out, but I just couldn't move. Facing the back of the elevator, I looked around to see if the entire wall would move. Nothing else even shifted as I could hear the whispering behind me get louder. Eventually, the fluid reached my left hand. It paused for a moment and then touched my finger. It paused, retracted, and then touched more and more of my hand than before. I didn't know if it was the drugs, but it looked like the fluid had moved at a speed of water and rushed all around me, forming a humanoid form on top of me. It leaned in and said, "I've been waiting for you." I was shocked at the phrase, so much so that I gained a little bit of alertness back. Its torso, arms, and head were formed while the rest of it had encompassed the chair on my legs. It reached up and placed its hands, and by that I mean human shaped hands, on each side of my face. It seemed to be learning when I reached my limit. I slumped down in the chair with absolutely no muscle tension to hold me up anymore. I could hear, but I couldn't even open my eyes. I could hear the thing speak, asking what was wrong as the fluid tightened around me. I could hear my neighbors trying to calm it down, saying, "He is still hurt. You have to give him time to heal." I could actually hear it respond with, "I healed already. Why can't he?" They started to explain, but it was far out to listen. I woke up the next morning in my bed with fresh dressings and nothing else. Okay, what the hell happened last night was all I could think. Struggling to get the sling on I had to wear, I walked out of my bedroom to the sound of someone in the kitchen. Don't care if I could smell eggs, I grabbed my pistol. Turning the corner, I could see the two, J and B, making breakfast in the kitchen. They both freaked out a little when a guy turned the corner with a firearm in hand and wearing only a medical sling. After the initial shock, I at least got some answers. They had volunteered to take care of me for 2 weeks until I was able to get off the strong medication and take care of myself. It would have been nice if someone had told me beforehand, though having two half naked ladies in my place was a new one for me. Too bad I couldn't enjoy it. Due to the doctor's orders, I was able to wake up, perform my physical therapy, take my pills, get some food and drink in me, maybe get some stretching in, and I was out again like a light. The pills were strong, too. I tried to fight them once and woke up with a headache from the ladies trying to carry my unconscious ass back to my bedroom, dropping me in the process. I turned into Garfield just eating and sleeping, putting on fat too, which I really didn't want. I was grateful to the ladies, though I'm sure they got tired of sleeping on the sectional couch. 2 weeks later, I thanked the ladies with some cash and some gifts. I was starting to wish I had made a move on one of them at least, though difficult to do when you're higher than a kite and spending more than half of your day asleep. Though I'm not sure they would have given a shit, since the moment I watched them enter the elevator, the fluid pulled them in and I could see them taking off their clothing. Really fast, too. I didn't know if it was hungry, horny, or just liked to play with people. I just rolled my eyes and went back to my apartment and was able to toss empty pill bottles away. At least now I can get my head clear and get to work. Thanks to technology, I was able to do most of my work online. When I wasn't working, I was going up and down the stairs trying to keep my weight down. Long walks across town helped too. It was nearly a month since I got back that I finally decided to say hello to my old friend. I rang the elevator and watched as it opened up to an empty room. I walked inside and let the door shut behind me. Standing there, I expected the wall to immediately move, but nothing happened. I looked around, puzzled at the situation. I wasn't sure if I had pressed the button or what. I stepped closer to the wall and said, "Hello again. Did you miss me?" The wall began to shudder just a little as I watched one of the tendrils, then another and another begin to reach out. I reached out with my hand and I held it up. Before it even reached my hand, the wall began to move and the humanoid form began to take shape. It took its time in forming as it seemed to smile at me. When it finished forming, it said, "Welcome back," and wrapped its arms around me. I didn't fight it this time, or she, I'm not quite sure, remembered to keep a similar density to human skin. This form pushed up against mine and it brought its face to mine. Again, I was not fighting this. With my good arm, I grabbed its body and pulled it tightly to me. As it pushed over closer, it put its legs, if you want to call them legs, around me, and a tone rang, and I could hear the doors opening. I could hear people stop mid-sentence and stride. I didn't know if the ones behind me were being serious or an ass, but I could hear a guy's voice ask, "Mind if we join?" Removing my hand from its back, I raised my hand distinctly to tell them no, while saying I'm number one. They chuckled, and the door shut as they left. Reaching my hand back around, I could feel it open my clothing to get underneath. I tried to take off the sling, and I flinched big time. I even yelped a little of the burst of pain. It asked me what was wrong, and I told it that I wasn't healed yet. Then it said something strange. "Maybe I can help." I chuckled and said, "Yeah, you can try." Its arm reached for my shoulder and proceeded to cover it with fluid. I could feel it working its way into my pores and around the scar. I could feel a cool sensation entering my shoulder, and pain spiked and subdued in odd bursts. While it did this, it didn't stop from continuing what it was doing before. I tried to stay focused, but that can be difficult when it feels like someone is either stabbing or electrocuting you. Eventually, it pulled at my knees and it had me lay down. With the exception of its hand on my shoulder, not moving, it kept the female form as we continued. Eventually, the pain in my shoulder and chest completely subsided, and I could focus on the activity we were going through. Now, this is odd, but what has been normal around here in the past year? I swear that wasn't meant to rhyme. Eventually, I gave the slime the DNA it desired so much. It seemed happy with it at least, to the point that it didn't change shape and just laid on top of me while I tried to catch my breath. The fluid slid under me and lifted me to my feet. I was still connected to it and didn't want to let it go. I leaned forward and gave it a kiss when I realized it had wrapped both its arms around it. I paused and was shocked. I moved my shoulder around, and the only issue was the severe atrophy. You fixed me, I said, looking into its eyes. Astonished, I continued, How? It put its finger to its mouth as to tell me to stop asking. I was so happy that it was suddenly time for round two. The next day at work, the guys were amazed that I was walking around without a sling. In fact, I had just come from the gym and a full body workout. They asked, and I only told one of them that it was the slime. It had gotten smart enough to fix me. When I explained how, I began to worry as he was asking too many questions. Being curious is one thing, digging for information, that's another. I was able to change the subject at work, but he wouldn't let it go. It seemed like twice an hour he would probe me for information. This went on for a week until I finally told him to drop it. I didn't tell him all the information, just that I was able to get healed by it in an hour, and I would normally take 6 months. Looking back, I really should have kept my frickin' mouth shut. In less than a week, I came back from work to find the elevator doors wide open with several repairmen around. This wouldn't be suspicious if it wasn't for them talking to the two police officers that went up the elevator with me before. I tried to sneak by and take the stairs, but they called me over and stood me in front of the repairman. Normally, I wouldn't have worried about anything and just been honest, but I noticed something. These were not normal repairmen. First off, they are far too muscular. Not that repair guys can't have muscle, but all of them look like they spent 3 hours a day in the gym plus juicing. Then there was their demeanor. Most repair folks just want to know the problem so they can go troubleshoot without anyone getting in their way. Then there were the clothes. Three of them were far too clean, while the others were far too dirty. And, of course, there was the final reason, which is elevator repair folks usually work in teams of two at the most. This was a team of five, since one of the elevators was called over. They didn't ask me if there was anything broken, only if I noticed anything strange in the elevator. I told them nothing out of the ordinary. Why? They looked at each other and said, We have gotten a report that there's some sort of infestation. I snapped back with, Fuck, do you mean we have rats again? As I looked over the shoulder to the elevator and then found my area. One of the cops said, No, we're talking about that thing. What thing? I asked abruptly. The cops got annoyed and started to raise their voices, then lowered them. You know what thing we're talking about. And when I looked confused at them, the other said, Don't play dumb, the slime monster thing. I looked him up and down for a second and then took a step back. Officer, I said, you might want to take some time off and, rest the thinking meat a little. The sheer anger he sent me with his eyes could split an aircraft carrier in two. I continued with, Look, since the elevator is out and I have a lot of stairs to climb. I turned and headed towards the stairs. As I did, one of the officers yelled at me, How did you heal so fast from getting shot? When I got to the doorway to the stairs, I opened up the door and yelled, HGH and stem cells, slamming the door. Dick! I ran up to my buddy's place, and thankfully they were in. I explained what was going on and that we need to get as many people as possible on the same page. It was probably too late, but we had to try. Unfortunately, we could only get about 7 people together at the time. We went to the elevator and we pried open the doors, jamming screwdrivers into the doors to keep them from closing. We tried to get our friend to come to us. This was the first time I saw inside the shaft. I never thought one could be so clean. We tried to call it without signaling those idiots on the ground floor. That didn't work. But B saying, "Can we have some fun?" Well, that got a reaction. This would be the first time we were able to see the entire size of our fluid friend. All four sides of the shaft were covered as the mass flowed its way up to us. It stopped right in front of us and formed itself, smiling like it always does. "So, who wants to have fun first? Or is this an all at once thing?" it asked. My buddy said, "Neither. We need to get you out of there." It looked confused before he continued, "The men downstairs are not friends. They have come to take you away, probably to do very bad and painful things to you." It asked, "Why would they do that?" My buddy's wife said, "Not all people are nice. They will cause pain for you to make you nothing more than their slave." "Slave?" it asked. She responded, "Someone who will make you do something you don't want to do. If you don't do it, they hurt you a lot," emphasizing that last point with her emotions. It seemed to think about it for a few moments before responded, "You can take care of me?" Simultaneously, we all answered, "Yes!" Then it said, "What about my children?" And we all just stopped. This suddenly became a true rescue mission. We asked it to show us what it meant by children, and before we continued, it produced a very small ooze, about half the mass of a ping pong ball. "This is one. There are others," it said with a clear look of dismay. I asked how many, and she showed three more of varying size, from able to fill half a shot glass to one about the size of a football. We all breathed a sigh of relief, since we thought there would be hundreds considering its size. The couples available were willing to take care of the little ones. In fact, it seemed like the little ones enjoying being with someone new. The ladies holding them were giggling as the young ones tickled them, mostly on the arms and on the hands. I could see the humanoid figure wave like water, and then the three smaller ones waved as well. This was the first time I had seen slimes talk to each other. We asked our slimy friend who she would want to stay with. She reached out her hand, and her hands kept stretching in my direction. They wrapped around me, and the rest of its body followed. It flowed parallel to the floor and began to put a lot of weight on me until it flowed down my body and reached the floor. From there, it formed feet and stood next to me, somehow condensing all that mass into humanoid form we had gotten used to. I reached my arm around its waist and pulled her in and said, "Well, I guess that settles it," while failing miserably to keep my smile subdued, of course. I turned to the others now. "So, who brought the beer? Because I'm about to order pizza." We all smiled and took the stairs to my apartment. We were hanging out as the pizza arrived. Our new friend, that the ladies now called Susan, I'm guessing it's a nod to the old CGI movie or something, would be right next to me when I paid for the pizzas. I know these guys have seen it all when it comes to delivery, but the look on this guy's face really said, "I definitely haven't seen it all." I don't think we stopped laughing for another 5 minutes once I shut the door. The party wound down around midnight, and it was still a weekday after all, and most of us had to be up and about early. As I cleaned up, Susan helped me drain all the remaining glasses and cleaned up the grease from the pizza. J and B decided to stay the night since we were far too drunk to even make it to the elevator doors. I made sure they both drank a bunch of water, though, before falling asleep. No point in a hangover if you don't have to have it at all. As I climbed into bed, Susan decided to watch over the girls for me. I ended up crashing out really hard as the long day at work, along with the stress of possibly losing our friend, along with one hell of a party, yeah, I was pretty much done. I was stirred awake by an arm falling on top of me. I rolled onto my back slowly and ended up dropping my shoulder into something hard. I didn't really care at this point, but At about 3 a.m., I stirred awake from something touching me in a rather sensitive area. I shot awake and instantly regretted it as I was still drunk, mind you, as I was not ready for the sudden shift in elevation. Jumping like that woke up the girls on either side of me. I could barely comprehend what was going on as I stared at Susan in front of us. We just looked at her, looked at each other, realized Susan had stripped us in our sleep. B asked, "What the hell, Susan?" As innocent as possible, she said, "Fun?" While all of us were having trouble keeping ourselves vertical after drinking so much and waking up from a stout sleep, Jay then asked, "Who else is still drunk?" We all raised our hands, and there was a long pause as we looked at each other. I just said, "Well, you wanna?" as I swung my head back and forth at the two ladies. Removing the remaining details, I will just say that we all had to call in sick the next day. Living with Susan became very interesting. I had to buy a bed with rubber sheets for her to lay down on and make sure she always got the amount of fluid she needed, and not the ones you're thinking of, by the way. We had to watch her because she would get bored if we were not around for long periods of time. I had to buy her a bunch of special toys for her to play with. She couldn't see, so leaving on the TV just wasn't going to work. Though she liked listening to the radio a lot. Maybe the reverberation was like a slimy message, I don't know. J and B started staying over a lot more. Not that they kept me awake, mind you. They had their own fun planned. Susan had stayed with me ever since. B moved away, and J moved in about a year later. We were able to make sure no one found out about Susan, to include family. Now, after so long, she is truly family to me, and I would protect her as such. Oh, let me clarify something. I first met Susan nearly 15 years ago. Jay and I have been married for almost 13 now. Our four children, along with Susan, are with us in a house outside the city. We tried having pets too, but they were never going to get along with Susan. Although the livestock doesn't count. Our oldest is starting high school next year and is looking forward to it. Our youngest is barely out of diapers, so she's got a while to go yet. I was able to get a good enough at my job that I became the member of the board, and now I only have to go into work once a week, at least physically. Aside from that, I had to telecommunicate every single day of the work week, of course. I'm writing this as Susan plays with our two girls in the living room. She must have picked up echolocation along the way because you'd be hard pressed to tell that she can't see. She's a great guardian to the young ones and gets smarter every year. I see the boys coming in from the creek again. I'm sure they will call over Susan as soon as they walk in the door. It still makes me laugh. I have to write this out so that I can explain why we would never let her go this far beyond what she does for us. You see, she has done something to us, something amazing. She can tell if we're hurt just by slamming over our bodies. Then she goes inside through our pores and fixes us. I don't know how, so don't ask. Because she does this, Jay and I look the same as we did 15 years ago. Looking at her right now, I don't see any wrinkles, stretches, or even gray hair. Her flawless skin seems to almost shine as she's showing my daughter how to make brownies. As for me, well, let's just say that my bad knee isn't my bad knee anymore. Oh, gee. Oh, yeah. One of Susan's kids just jumped onto my arm. I don't know why, but it likes doing that when I'm dictating these. Mass wise, it might only be the size of a basketball right now, but it's learning the same way her mother did. I almost forgot. I say she because it seems that she likes to stay in that humanoid form as sort of a default setting now. Oh well. Here comes the boys, and it's almost time for dinner, so I guess that's the last one for me. I would have never guessed that living with a creature in the house would be so good. The thought of losing her, or her young ones, ever, is just as painful as losing one of my own. Then again, considering how her physiology works, this one might be mine too, or maybe it's my wife's. You know what? Slime physiology is weird.